Is Jalen Hurts the next Donovan McNabb or RG3? The Eagles' new coaching staff, one of the youngest in the league, injects some life into this offense. Can the Eagles outperform PFF's bottom bucket expectations of predicting that the Eagles could possibly be the worst team in the league? Let's hit the opening bell and preview the Philadelphia Eagles.
Welcome, Kings, to this edition of the Not Your Daddy's Sports Betting Podcast and live stream presented by SportfolioKings, the future of plus EV sports betting research where we leverage fundamental handicapping, data science, and Wall Street-style portfolio management principles to help make you a sharper, more informed bettor.
Indeed, it's preseason 2021. Training camp just kicking off. We'll be diving into all 32 teams over the course of this summer. We're going to be evaluating market expectations, providing you with our analyses, predictions as we head into week one. And today we'll be talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. So let's talk some football, Zach. Looking at 2020 to provide a little bit of broader context here. Let's talk a little bit about, how the Eagles performed last year. So the Vegas estimated wins had, quite high expectations for the Eagles, sitting at 9.5 wins. Of course, they didn't even come close to that. Not even half of the amount of wins needed to cover that expectation, as they finished the season 4-11-1. ATS record 10-6. Surprising. And average margin of victory -5. Average cover negative. Realized strength of schedule 11. So a tough schedule, obviously can totally beat up. Had one of the best offensive lines in football heading into the year. And really couldn't even make it out of training camp without some vicious injuries to that offensive line. The full kind of cluster of the expected starting lineup there never even played together over the course of the full season. Had a constant rotation of, second stringers, third stringers playing together, which could be a positive for 2021, as a lot of backups got a lot of real-time game experience. And so now you could say that they have a lot more depth on that offensive line now. The offensive line looks to be healthy moving into this year. But then even beyond the offensive line, the Eagles obviously had injuries across wide receiver core as well. Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Jalen Reagor. That was supposed to be, to some, one of the most robust, wide receiver sets in all of football. Alshon Jeffrey didn't show up until week 11 or 12 and was a complete non-factor. Deshaun Jackson got injured early as well. Pretty much, maybe he showed up for one game and it really made an impact, but otherwise non-factor. Jalen Reagor missed a handful of games as well, non-factor. JJ Arcega-Whiteside, one of their second-round draft picks, wide receiver for a couple years ago, another just non-factor. And basically it was their fourth, fifth, sixth string wide receivers that were ultimately playing. Zach Ertz got hurt. Dallas Goedert got hurt. This was just a shell of what many people thought that the Eagles would be over the course of the season, and it showed up in the numbers. And
to clarify,
the Eagles was one of those teams last year that we bet a lot, and lost a lot on.
Yeah, and to clarify, that 10-6 is a typo. It's supposed to be 6-10 ATS, which the chart demonstrates if you're able to see it on the stream. So basically the Eagles were not very good at covering spreads last year. They definitely underperformed market expectations. across the season. And it kind of started, just to kind of piggyback off what you're talking about, Brett, it started in the offseason, because remember, there was no offseason for every team. So the question became, well, how are teams going to handle not having a typical, offseason program and preseason, etc.? Well, the Eagles, being the veteran savvy team that they were last year, and having Doug Peterson, a coach very loose with his veteran players, basically it was like, the veteran guys, don't worry about it too much. Like, take your time. Don't like. So the Eagles had a terrible kind of like structure going into last season, compounded by injuries, compounded by Wentz having, the yips, maybe, whatever you want to call it. So, the Eagles were kind of set up to fail, I think, last season, but no one recognized it until it was way too late, including us. Which actually will bring me back to a point later on the Eagles in regards to 2021, is the talent on this team, obviously with the higher expectations last year, was projected to win 9.5 wins. And this season, you have touts at PFF vying for the Eagles to have the worst record in the NFL, which means they're going to win 2 games. I don't know. I don't think the talent drop-off was so extreme that the Eagles get 2 games worse than the awful apocalyptic season they had last year, unless Jalen Hurts is the worst quarterback in the NFL, which he's not. So what are they talking about? I don't know. But if we're looking at this chart, Brett, and for those who can't see it, the Eagles were getting a lot of love, it looks like, not a lot. I mean, what, over the 20% threshold, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, almost 6 weeks of the season. So I would say that compared to what we've seen, it is quite a bit. Like, people just couldn't get off the Eagles, it seems like, after their bye. You still had 20% market support in week 10 and 11, and the market got crushed. Yeah.
But in fact, the weeks 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 is actually makes perfect sense to me, because again, the Eagles was our Achilles heel last year. We just kept betting the Eagles, even though they kept losing, because every week it was just, we were seduced into, a bigger and bigger line that said like, well, this is just too many points. And as we can see here, it kind of is a demonstration of how we were allocating our picks. So we see in week 12, it was kind of a lower, 10% market support loss. Week 13, around 12% market support loss. Week 14, around the same in 1. Okay. Week 15, even higher lost. Week 16, even higher loss. And it's kind of like the market even saw that even as the Eagles kept not covering spreads, they just couldn't drop the Eagles, because the line just kept getting kind of better and better and better. And, it's one of these things that, we definitely want to improve in our process moving forward, is if you do not have a read on a team and you are 1-4 betting them, you clearly do not have an accurate perspective of whether or not there is value or not. But we kept thinking, nope, there's got to be value here. There's got to be value here. So we went 1-5, 1-6, 1-7. I think we were legit 1-8 betting the Eagles last year, which is literally probably, was one of just the weakest points of our overall betting strategy in 2020.
Well, it's kind of like, what do they say, like catching a falling knife.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of the time when, this is a little quick gambling story when I was like 22 years old, is I went to the roulette table and the guy I went with told me, hey, bet the same color and just double your bet each time, on the same color, and just keep going until you win. And I didn't even have that much money, so I don't know how I expected to sustain that. But I did, and we bet black every time, and it legitimately hit red 12 times in a row as soon as we sat down. And he got obviously wiped out. I got wiped out with whatever money I brought. But that was an example of, buying a narrative on a team too early and saying, no, it's going to come around. It's going to come around. It's going to come around. Okay, maybe it does come around. But how much money did you lose in the process of it coming around until you don't have any money anymore? And so it won't matter if it comes around, right? I think to your point, Brett, is, differentiating between, do you have edge? Do you have plus EV with this team situation matchup, all the things we've talked about on stream so far? Or are you gambling? Are you guessing?
Yeah.
Are you taking?
And there's actually a financial market maxim around the same concept, which is the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent. And that was pretty much exactly how the Eagles played out with respect to how we were positioning around them.
That's a great point. So I think I don't think there's anything to take away from this. I think the Eagles are a different team this year, whole new coaching staff. So I think
any team that is ravaged with injuries to the extent that the Eagles were, is there's not going to be a lot of signal from that season to take forward into the next season. The only thing that you might be able to is a lot of the backups got a lot of real-time game experience, which can say that, like Travis Fulgham really showed up in a lot of games last year, a kind of breakout wide receiver for the Eagles, tailed off a little bit near the end. But again, he's like their fifth slated wide receiver this season, but just demonstrates that you basically have your fifth wide receiver had a lot of, showed flashes of upside last year, and can really pay dividends in 2021. And that's just one example of that kind of being the case moving forward.
Yeah, and if we look at the stats last year, just to quickly touch on, I think the defense is probably the only side of the ball that's applicable, really. The sack percentage was third in the NFL. So, the Eagles still have that vaunted front that can get pressure, which obviously is pivotal if you don't want to give up 30 points a game. Obviously, they gave up 26 points a game, but, it seems like that was in part due to their red zone scoring defense, which was very bad at 27th. So if they can, fix that, they may have a shot. And I think the defense coordinator is a Mike Zimmer disciple. So, new defensive coaching blood, which should be good. The only concern I have on the Eagles defense from last season is they're getting older. Some of their best players like Fletcher Cox, Darius Slay, etc., are another year older, in their 30s. So that is a little bit concerning. So you really need to see some new blood start to perform well. But because of last season, I don't know, a lot of last season I feel like is a mulligan for a lot of these teams and players. So whatever they were in 2019 is probably going to get a little closer to being, even if they're a little bit older, like Tom Brady, I'm bullish on. But I don't think there's too much to pull away from Eagles stats other than the defense. Probably
no, and what you can
slightly,
what you can see is again the offense, just points 26th, third down conversion 28th, rush 25th, sack percentage 32nd, dead last, getting sacked 10% of the time.
And we know when that happened.
Terrible.
That was not when Jalen Hurts was under center.
No, and that he did, and that was just one of the reasons why, again, the offensive line was just so decimated that Carson Wentz was basically just a sitting duck, kind of every single time. And two, he's not the type of quarterback who, he holds on to the ball longer than a typical quarterback anyway. So plus you compound that kind of just quarterback orientation and style with an offensive line that's going to let people just right through them, then the outcome of that is going to be a lot of sacks, and that's how you rank 32nd. And then that's why the Eagles looked slightly better when Jalen Hurts did come in, just because he was able to mitigate some of the vulnerabilities of that offensive line, because he was obviously a much more mobile quarterback than Carson Wentz was.
Yeah, and that.
But also penalties 30th, giveaways 30th, almost 2 turnovers a game. I mean, that's just miserable. And so again, just bringing the overall health of the team more so together, and specifically on the offensive line, but also within the wide receiver set. I mean, again, you get back, a more fully healthy Zach Ertz. Again, he's a little bit maybe over the hump now. But again, Dallas Goedert, Jalen Reagor now is going to be in his, second year. And now, maybe if we go to the next slide and we kind of look at the kind of offseason changes, also, drafted Devontae Smith from, Alabama, in the first round. So that adds another kind of dynamic wide receiver to this set. So, I mean, it's hard to fathom, again, unless Jalen Hurts is absolutely like Dwayne Haskins level of bad, which he's not a dumb. Dwayne Haskins has a low, not just football IQ, just IQ. And Jalen Hurts is not in that same level of kind of tranche of stupidity.
Well, and that's kind of what I want to talk about on this pod, because I think it's going to be the most important part is, going back to PFFs, like obviously they're getting cute trying to show they know how to bet sports, which they don't. But, trying to say, oh, the Eagles are going to potentially be the worst team in the NFL, worst record, like based on what? They're in the worst division in the NFL. So just schedule alone, that's a tall order. That's minus EV to even make that suggestion to anybody. So if you look at Jalen Hurts, right, the one thing I like about Jalen Hurts first and foremost is his mental makeup. I mean, so look what the dude already went through. He's already gone through top of the world, getting the rug pulled out under him, having to transfer to Oklahoma from Bama, having to reprove himself, and he did well enough to get drafted in the second round. I mean, he easily could, if that experiment failed after Bama, he easily could have not been drafted and never seen a day in the NFL. But he improved his passing. He's obviously still not, a 70% completion percentage type quarterback, but his mentality is what some people might call it factor. That's very difficult for people to quantify, thus they dismiss it as non-existent. Is everything I've been reading and hearing through camp and just his offseason is he's playing like he's the underdog. And from my personal experience, like relating it to my own anecdote, is when I'm underestimated is when I perform my best. When I'm overestimated, that's when I probably mess up a little bit. But I think to Jalen Hurts' effectiveness, especially early this season before defenses really know what he's going to do, is he has the mental fortitude and strength that he's not Josh Rosen, and he's got legs. He can be dynamic. He can make plays. So just that in itself, I mean, I think the market's totally discounting what Jalen Hurts can do, especially in like a one-off season. And for that reason, I'm very bullish. And remember, their running backs were all banged up last year. They're healthy. They're better. Their wide receiver group is better than it was last year. Their offensive line, especially the right side of the line, healthy, is very good. So there's a lot to be potentially excited about with this offense that if, let's say, Dak underperforms, it's the best offense in the NFC East, which isn't saying a whole lot, but that's not saying nothing either. Yeah, that's my Jalen Hurts rant.
No,
Any pushback? Because you're less bullish on Jalen Hurts than me in general. I'm curious to see if you have like a negative, because his mental makeup is spot on. I will.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things that we talked about when we would convince ourselves to bet the Eagles, even at the end of last year, was kind of around that narrative around Jalen Hurts. And I mean, again, he didn't play great. He basically, but again, he was a rookie. These are the first games he's coming into. It's when the team is kind of like at its most beat up point in the end of the season. And then you had questionable coaching decisions as well that obviously ultimately led Doug Peterson to get fired. Even taking Hurts, out of the game earlier, or maybe he didn't even play, I can't remember, but in that final game versus Washington, where the Eagles basically gave up.
Yep.
And So just that's just another, again, just anecdotal experience that says, what was kind of the overall preparation, decision making going on within the broader coaching staff, prepping Jalen Hurts for these games, putting him in the right positions where he's gonna help the team win games, when it sounds like they weren't even trying to win games. I mean, they definitely weren't trying to win that last game.
No,
that's for sure. I mean, they basically gave up. They basically forfeited.
Yep, they did.
Which is, again, was a stain on just the overall reputation of the NFL. That game was such a charade and a mockery.
Well, and Jalen Hurts wasn't happy about that, if memory serves. Like, I think in that moment, because and it's kind of what defines people as like true competitors, or just like win at any cost type people. Like, are you a cheater who doesn't care how they win, or do you have integrity? And I want to play the game because this is what I'm paid to do, and I'm paid to beat the other guy no matter the circumstance. And Jalen Hurts is that type of mentality and that type of guy. And that to me is leadership. And so for the QB position, the most important thing, so kind of like what we talked about with Sam Darnold, is what we don't really know is like how good of a leader he is. Like, does he see ghosts? Like, does he have the yips? Does he have the mental fortitude to be a good QB? We don't even know that yet. Whereas Jalen Hurts, I feel like he's got the mental fortitude. The real question is how, his completion percentage is not very good. Right. But if you look at Donovan McNabb, his first 5 years in the NFL, which, he was a decent quarterback overall, he was less than 60%. Now, I know it was a different time in the NFL, but, when having a decent team around you with good scheming and he can use his legs effectively, there's no reason why the Eagles couldn't compete to win the NFC East this year. So that's why, I don't know, the Eagles hate and worst team NFL talk just to me makes no sense.
No, it makes no sense because, first of all, this offensive line, if it stays healthy, could be one of the best in the NFL. And there's no doubt about that. So if you give him time, and again, he's got a young, inexperienced wide receiver set, but it has potential. Like, they could surprise to the upside. And then the defense is not even really a weakness. I mean, so it's, and again, to your point also, they're not playing in a tough division either. So like, let's look at, the schedule next season, and maybe this can, start to flesh out a little bit more so. So, Vegas estimated wins 6.5, estimated strength of schedule 18th. When I'm looking at this schedule, it's probably a little bit tougher than, the strength of schedule implies. I don't really see a lot of gimmies on this. So you look at the Lions, the Jets, those are probably, their two easiest games. And outside of that, there isn't really an easy game.
It says that they're an underdog against the Jets. I'm sorry. That's dumb. Lions, Giants, Jets, split. Let's say they split with Washington or Dallas. I mean, you're already at 4 wins there. So can they surprise the Falcons, the Broncos, the Panthers, the Raiders? Like, sure. If they get 2 more wins there, you're at 6. So I mean, I don't see much value in the under here unless you are a complete either Jalen Hurts hater, or you think Eagles are officially in a complete rebuild mode, which wouldn't make sense based on the roster.
I think where some of the bearishness is stemming from too is the coaching staff. So unproven, very young. So it's one of the youngest coaching staffs in all of the NFL.
But can it be worse than last year's coaching staff? I would argue no. And that is why.
I mean, that's.
And again, so if you look at last year, they won 4 games and had a tie, and they were actually pretty competitive in a lot of their games. With terrible schematics and coaching and terrible quarterback play for most of the season. I mean, well, that's gone. I mean, that's gone, and the talent, I think, is about the same, if not a little better this year. So I just don't see, I don't know, less than 4 wins. Like, I don't even, that's not even an option.
Yeah, again, I think it's this schedule that makes it a little bit more difficult to project, with conviction, any sort of over. And again, like you've mentioned on some of our other team previews, is our natural inclination, our bias is to unders. Because unders, is fading anybody's expectation that everything's going to go according to plan. Sure. Overs need everything to go according to plan. Usually that, is not the case.
Yeah.
And most casual recreational bettors too, their bias is to the over, actually, which creates a premium on betting over. And so when I'm just looking at the schedule, we're looking at, for those who can't see, Falcons, Niners, Cowboys, Chiefs, Panthers, Bucks, Raiders, Lions, Chargers, Broncos, Saints, Giants, Jets, then the bye. So a very bad,
big stretch,
very poorly positioned bye. It's week 14.
Yeah.
So there's really, by the time their bye sets in, the season is probably already said for. Like they've positioned themselves for whatever they're going to be. There's going to be no kind of respite or reset or any other kind of like schematic, like broader kind of macro adjustments for the rest of the season.
So the question then becomes,
that's definitely a downside.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I guess the question then becomes, are they at that point in it to win the division, right? Because they finished the season playing Washington twice, Giants and Cowboys.
Yes.
So when they hit that bye, if they're only a game out of first, right? 2 games, maybe even. They have that final stretch to kind of, wherever they're at, maybe pull it together and squeeze through. So I guess the question becomes, real question is, will they get 4 to 5 wins before that bye? And will the NFC East be around that same threshold? Probably a good way.
So where's your 7 wins? Show me your 7 wins.
Well, so like I said, I think you need to get to 4 or 5 before the bye. So Lions, Jets, I would say Giants or Raiders, Giants or Broncos. So one of those, that's 3. And then one of these early ones, they could beat the Falcons, they could beat the Cowboys or the Panthers, Raiders, one of them even, maybe 2 of them. I think you're around 4 or 5. And that's, again, this is assuming, kind of to your point, Brett, that things are going right for the Eagles. If they're going right for the Eagles, I think they'll definitely have probably 4 to 5 wins before the bye, which puts them in position to, like, if they win out, they'll win the division, or if they win 3 out of 4, whatever that is, potentially. So
no, I think they can definitely surprise the Cowboys. They can surprise the Raiders because they're both heavy underdogs. They're pretty much heavy underdogs in almost every game.
Which is weird because with that
they're pretty much a 3-point underdog in 75% of the game.
Even to Washington, not meaning to do that.
I don't think, again, maybe they could, but again, I'm pretty bullish on Washington. I would say they could surprise the Cowboys. That's 1. They could definitely beat the Falcons week 1. So that's 2. Raiders 3. Lions 4. Giants 5. Jets 6. And then maybe the Giants again. That's 7. So you're pretty much projecting they need to sweep the Cowboys and the Giants.
Yep. It's not ideal.
It's hard. It's tough. It's tough.
But
again, I'm probably not gonna. I don't feel strongly about betting Eagles over, but I definitely feel strongly to fading PFF's prediction that they're not saying that the Eagles are going to be the worst team in the NFL. They're saying there's value in the way the market is pricing the Eagles as potentially being the worst team in the NFL. But I don't think there's any value there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
None.
And to your point, I think you've talked me off the ledge. Like, I'm probably not going to bet this. There's too much risk going on the over, to your point. So you have to have a very strong, like for instance, the Bucks. Bucks, I have no problem going to the over because they're going to be vying for that number 1 seed. They have an extra game. If Tom Brady, it's hinges on if Tom Brady's healthy, and even if not, Could they still get 10, 11, 12 wins by the time he got hurt? Probably. So there's a lot of variables that, like, if things go not perfectly, you could still get there. Whereas the Eagles, I mean, if something goes wrong, it could get tough sledding with that schedule to where, like, they don't reach 6 wins. So, yeah, I think this play is a no play. If you're going to lean anything, like, you might as well then lean towards a playoff. If things go well for the Eagles and let's say go bad for the NFC East, just like we said with the Giants the other day, I mean, there's more value in hitting, playoffs than, going over, under, boom or bust.
Yeah, I probably like playoffs plus 275 more so than over 6.5, but I don't even necessarily love that. I feel like it should be, I think it's still short. Like, I feel like it should be like 350.
Well, it's short because the division's bad. So it's pricing in that winning the division you get.
Because the Eagles, I mean, probably not. It's probably a little bit egregious, but it's like the Eagles could go under and still make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's true. But again, I think it's going to come down to, I mean, there's a lot of big lines against the Eagles this year, which doesn't make sense to me because.
No, from a betting ATS perspective, this looks like there's going to be.
I mean, they're definitely going 9 and 7.
It's hard because of how we bet them last year.
No, I'm over that because remember that was a totally different team, different quarterback. It's just a completely different makeup of a team. So it's last year to me is like throw that out. Actually, I want to do more research on the Eagles throughout the offseason to get a better pulse because, again, though we bet the Eagles often, I still maintain conviction when Jalen Hurts played the Saints and the market was on the Saints. And the reason I bought into Jalen Hurts is because I actually thought I had an edge, which was what you brought up earlier, is he mitigated the pressure that the offensive line was going to let in from one of the best defenses in the league last year, the Saints. And so what is that going to do?
I know.
No, but it's
and the thing is we use that.
No, but that's not.
That's true.
Let me get to the
that's
point.
True.
Let me get to the point. So the reason I bring up the past is to talk about the future, and what we're talking about is for next year, with these lines being so high, they're taking into consideration that Jalen Hurts can't do what he did versus the Saints, which is, he's not going to throw at 70% completion percentage, but that's not how he's going to win games anyways. What he's going to do is, it's a close game. He can use his legs. The defense keeps it within range. Maybe the Eagles get a little bit of a lead because they have good running back. They have a good right side of the offensive line. So my point being is, if he's a good game manager and he uses his legs and the Eagles defense plays as well as it did last year, for instance, moderately decent, there's no reason why they can't be in these games, win half of them, and cover, maybe 9, 10 out of 16 games. So, from an ATS perspective.
Yeah, no, I can see it. And again, like, people are pricing in as if there's going to be no evolution in Jalen Hurts' game over the course of a full offseason, full training camp, full preseason, like there wasn't last year. Again, being a rookie last year, was probably the worst year ever to be a rookie. So you don't want to judge really any rookies. And we talked a lot about this when we were kind of evaluating some of those rookie cornerbacks who kind of pretty much every highly drafted rookie cornerback performed miserably last year. You don't want to judge them too harshly off, the product of last season's work. And so I'm willing to give Jalen Hurts a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and more so just because, again, relative to market expectations, which seem like for the broader market is in the dumpster for this team, for Jalen Hurts writ large, that I feel like because of that, there's upside. Not necessarily that I'm super bullish on Jalen Hurts actually being like, a great, a playoff worthy quarterback or the next Donovan McNabb.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. Is I think we talked about this on the Giants too, and we can finish with this. is, it's just when the market yings, are you yanging, right? Like, are you anticipating what the market's doing, and the market generally is overreacting or underestimating? And it seems like with the Eagles, based on these spread lines and some of the chatter online, is Eagles stink, Jalen Hurts is terrible, and it's the same team as last year, which is literally, and I don't know if any of that is true. I think more likely the opposite is true. So definitely, I think value to be had on the Eagles. Obviously, depending how the coaching staff kind of fares, I think preseason will be a good tell. But they have a lot of talent. I mean, and that's the one thing is, like, sometimes coaching can be subpar, and if you have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, that can take you, a little ways as well.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is too, is again, a lot of people said like, oh, well, Miles Sanders had, a rough sophomore season. Well, again, the offensive line was terrible. It affects everything relative to the offense.
And he was banged up too.
Again, if you literally go from the worst offensive line to the best offensive line, that's going to materially change the downstream performances of everything related to it. And that includes Jalen Hurts, it includes the wide receivers, it includes Miles Sanders.
We saw that in the
there's
Super
more
Bowl.
To like than to dislike here for sure.
The Super Bowl gave us Exhibit A of what happens when your offensive line is terrible.
Exactly. Even Patrick Mahomes can't overcome it.
His worst game ever.
So good stuff. That wraps up today's episode on the Eagles. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check out Sportfolio Kings platform at sportfoliokings.com. We're going to be releasing a bunch of different tools, again, market-oriented research, the type of stuff that you're not seeing out there on the market today. We're going to be providing our own in-house managed Sportfolios, which will have our own kind of weekly picks over the course of the season. We'll be providing that content for free to all subscribers all season long. So as we opened, this ain't going to be your daddy's sports betting. So let's get out there and get prepped to take your bookie to the woodshed.
And of course, as always, ping me.